Hello, hi, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to continue our series on Supabase. So in the past two videos, we have learned about email authentication and Google Auth. And in today's video, we are going to learn about storage. So we are going to use the same Supabase as well as the Android project that we have been using from the past two videos. And in today's video, we are going to learn how we can create a bucket, how we can upload a file to that bucket, and how we can read that file from the bucket. Now, having said that, let's get straight into it. The first thing that we need to do is to configure the Supabase project. So for that, what we will do is we will open up the Supabase project and we will go to storage. And inside the storage, you will see something like this where we don't have any bucket or anything right now. But what we need to do here is we need to add the policies. So once you open up policies, you will see a screen something like this where there is basically three different sections. You can see there is bucket policies, there is other policies under storage.objects, and there is policies under storage.buckets. So what these three sections mean is that, let's say once we create a bucket, then you can add a specific policy for that bucket over here. And let's say you want to add a global bucket policy, then you can add it over here. And also there is something called storage.objects level policy. And what is object over here is basically the file that we are uploading. So for example, to give you a brief example here is that, let's say you want to only allow users who are authenticated to create a bucket as well as upload a file. So then we have to add a policy to only allow the people who are authenticated to create a bucket. You can add a generic bucket policy over here. And as well as, let's say you can only allow people who are authenticated to upload a file or read a file or anything related to that particular file. Then you can add that particular file level policies over in this particular section. So we can either create a bucket manually over here, either by going to this particular option and creating it over here, or we can do this programmatically. Okay, so what we will do is we will see how the programmatically method works, because this is quite simple. You can just fill up that particular field and create the bucket, but we will see how the programmatically method works. But we also need to add a policy to create the bucket, right? Right now there are no policies for bucket level. So what we will do here is that we will create a bucket level policy. So I'm creating a generic bucket level policy over here. So I'm going to click on new policies and you will get two options. Either you can choose from template or write from scratch. So we will choose from template. So if I click on this particular option, you will get a couple of templates over here. You can see it says enable read access to everyone, enable insert access for authenticated users only, and other such templates. On the right hand side, you can see this is basically just an SQL command or statement that is there. So what we will do in our scenario is that we will only allow users to either update, create, or delete the bucket if they are authenticated. So we are going to use the second one, which is the enable insert access for authenticated users only, but we will update this so that it allows all the other CRUD level operations as well. So we will choose the second option. We will click on use this template, and over here you can see it says that the allowed operation is insert. But what we will do here is we will choose all so that it does select, insert, update, delete, all these operations. And under the using expression, we will also pass true. And we will update the policy name to, let's say, enable all CRUD operations for authenticated users only. And we will click on review and we will say save policies. Now you can see the successfully saved policy and we can see the policy over here. The next step is to actually go to the Android project and add the method to create a bucket. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm using the same project that we have created for the couple of our past videos, but what I have done is I've added a new branch. I've created a new branch from the Google Auth branch that we worked on. And what we will do first is to add the required dependencies. Then we will update the client, and then we will add the view model method, and finally we will add the button to call that particular method. So let's add the dependencies first. So let's open the build Gradle and we will add the dependency, which is the same one, except we will add storage -kt. Okay. And the next one that we require is coil. So what we will be doing is that we will be uploading an image to the storage, and then we will read that image and view it on the application. So as I said, it's not a full-fledged application, it's just a demo app to check all the different functionalities. Okay, let's sync this. So once the Gradle is synced, the next thing is that we have to update our client. Let's open our Supabase client. What we will be doing here is we're going to add or install storage. So we will search for storage and you will see this, the first option. Choose that, and that is how we will be able to add the storage dependency to our project. So the next step is to actually update the view model. But what I realized is that the view model that we have created is called Supabase auth view model. Let's change this. Let's make it generic. Let's call it just Supabase view model. Okay, we are going to use the same view model for all our functionalities. So if I scroll down, what we will add here is a function to create the bucket. So we will write function create bucket, which will take the name of the bucket, and similar to as we did, we have to add the scope, and inside that we need to add the try catch block. Now what we will do here is we will update the value of this to say user state loading, and then what we will do here is we will write client dot storage dot create bucket, and the ID would be the name. And what we can do here is we can either make the bucket public, which means that anybody can read the data from the bucket, or we can make it private. So let's make it private. We can say public equals to false, and we will limit the file size to, let's say, 10 megabytes. Okay. So if we have made the bucket private, that means we have set the value of public to false. Then let's say once we upload the file, we won't be able to read the file with the public URL. We would need a signed URL to read the file. So we will see both the ways how we can actually read the file by using the signed URL as well as the public URL. Okay. So right now we have made it as private. So once we will write the method to read the file, we have to use the signed URL. Okay. And after that, what we will do is we will update the user state value to say success, and we will write the message as created bucket successfully. And in the catch block, we will write user state value, user state error e dot message. Now let's go to the main activity. And what I will do here is that I'm just going to add a button. We are not going to create a fancy UI for now. We're just understanding the different concepts. So I'm just going to add a button. And what this button will do is upon clicking, we will do view model dot create bucket. And let's say we call the name of the bucket as, let's say, photos. We are going to name the bucket as photos. So that is what I'm passing over here. And the text would be create bucket. Okay. Now let's run the application and check if everything is working fine or not. Okay, so we can see that the app has been installed on the emulator, and we are able to see this particular button called create bucket. Now, since the user is not logged in, if we try to create the bucket, it should throw an error. Okay, so let's check that first. If I click on create bucket, it should give an error that it violates the row level security policy. This means that it is not validating the policy that we have provided. So we need to first of all authenticate the user, and then only we would be able to create the bucket. So let's log in the user first of all. Let's do the login with Google. So we can see that we have logged in via Google. Now, if we try to create the bucket, it should be able to create the bucket successfully. So you can see it says created bucket successfully. Now we can go back to the Supabase dashboard and verify if we have a new bucket over there called photos or not. So as you can see, we have a new bucket called photos over here, and it is empty right now. Okay. So we are able to successfully create a bucket programmatically. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is to actually upload an image to this bucket as well as read the image from this particular bucket. Now to do that also we need to add a policy. So we have added a policy at the bucket level, the generic bucket level policy. Now we need to add a object level policy. Now this object is basically whatever we are going to upload to any bucket. So let's add the policy. Again, we are going to use the template, and the same template is being used for this also. I'm going to use the same template. The second one, which says to allow enable insert access for authenticated users only, I'm going to update this to allow all the operations, and I'm going to change the name to enable CRUD operations for authenticated users only, and I'm going to add true for the using expression as well. We're going to review this. You will see this particular SQL command, and we're going to click on save policy. And we are able to successfully add the policy at the object level also. Now we will go back to the Android project. We are going to add two more methods, one to upload the file and the second one to read the file. We will also need to choose an image from the gallery. So we're going to add a method for that too, as well as we are going to display the image once we read the file. So we are going to use coil for that. Now let's go to the Supabase view model. We're going to add, as I said, two more methods to this. The first one would be to upload file. So we'll write upload file, bucket name, file name, and it takes byte array. Okay, so we need to provide the file as a byte array. Also at the bucket level, you can also choose the type of files you would allow the user to upload. So you can also add the allowed mining types. So it's totally up to you. You can use this method to give a list of types that you will allow for this particular bucket. But for now, I'm keeping it as empty. That means you can add any type of file to this bucket. Okay. Now after this, same thing, we need to add view model scope, launch, try catch block. We will say value equals to user state error. Over here we'll say user state value equals to user state loading. And after this, what we will do is we will first of all get the bucket. Okay, so we'll say client.storage, and in the array we will pass the bucket name. Then we will just simply write bucket.upload. The path also, so what you can do is you can create folders, subfolders and all those things. You can add a path accordingly, but for now I'm just adding it directly inside the bucket. So I'm just going to write file name, and I'm going to add an extension. So what you can do is you can actually get the extension from the file that is being selected from the gallery, but for now, just for this particular demo, I'm going to hard code it. Okay, so second is the byte array. Okay, and the third method is upsert, which basically means that if there is a file in the same path, do we want to update it or not? Okay, so we will just say true. You can give false. It's totally up to you. And the last step is to just update the user state. Success, and say file uploaded successfully. Okay. Let's also add the second method, which is to get the file. So we'll say read file. Okay. I'm just giving it as a generic name. You can add upload image, get image, is totally up to you. Same thing, I'm going to add bucket name, then I'm going to add the file name and a callback method actually. So I will say on image URL retrieve. image, this will be a string, unit, this should actually be a URL. Let's make this to be on separate lines. And again, same thing, we want to scope launch, try catch block, exception, error message, loading state. And after this, what we will do is we will again get the bucket. So we'll write client.storage bucket name. Okay. Then now, as I said earlier, that since our bucket is not public, we need to get the signed URL. Okay. So let me first show you how we can do that. So we'll say val URL equals to bucket dot create signed URL. Okay. And then what we will do here is we will just get the file. So we'll write file name dot jpj, and we will also need to provide a time limit for this particular URL to be valid. So we'll say expires in, and let's say 20 minutes. Okay. So what this will do is it will create a signed URL which would be valid for 20 minutes. Okay. Now this method would give you this method would not give you the entire URL, but just the portion of the URL which is the signed part. Okay. You would need to add the base URL for our Supabase project before that. Okay. But on the other scenario where we can get the public URL, it provides the entire URL along with the base URL. Okay. So I'm not sure why it did that, but this is what it is. So what you can do is you can have a constant somewhere in your project where you have the base URL of your Supabase project, and then you just can append it before this particular URL. Okay. Also, there are different ways to actually get all the files inside it. So you can just look through the documentation. So it's not that you have to provide just the file names, each of the file names. So there is basically a method which would give you all the file names inside a particular bucket. And after that, you can just iterate it over it and you can get all the URLs. Okay. So but for this particular example, I'm just hard coding a particular file and I'm going to read that particular file. Okay. So as you can see that if I do this, you can see it says URLs. So you can basically provide the list of file names over here, and you can get the list of signed URLs also. Just go through the documentation once. It has lots of methods regarding storage, how to create the bucket, how to delete the bucket, how to get signed URL, how to get all the files inside a bucket. All those things are there in the documentation. I will provide the link in the description. Feel free to check it out. As I said, but for this particular example, I'm just hard coding a single image to give you a demo how these things work. Okay. So once we have got this particular URL, I would just simply pass it to the callback function. Okay. We can also update the user state. You can say file read successfully. Now we will go to the main activity. We will add the method to actually read the file from the gallery, and then we will add a button to upload the file and a button to read the file, as well as a section where we will be using coil to read the image and show it. Let's do that. So inside the main activity, there are a couple of things that we need to add first of all. So let me add that. So I'm going to add val image URI by remember, which would be a mutable state of URI, and the default value would be null. Then what we need to do is we will need to use the launcher for activity results. So I'm going to add that directly over here. This is what we are going to use. And this would be variable, not a val, but a var. So I'm going to use this to create a contract, which would give me the URI of the image that we have chosen from the gallery. Okay, once we have this, what we are going to do is we are going to create a button. Let me add it after the Google login. Let me add it over here. So what we are going to do here is have added a button over here, which upon clicking launches the launcher, and we are going to pass the type as image and the text says select image. So once you click on the button, it should open up the gallery. You should be able to view the images. Once you select that image, it would return back the URI. It would update this particular variable. It would update the mutable state over here. And once we do that, what else we can do is we can just give a small message which says that the image has been uploaded. So let us do that also. So let us add it at the very bottom. Let's add it over here. So what we are going to do here is we can just say that the image has been selected. Okay, so we can just say image selected over here. So as soon as there is some value inside the image URI, so by default it is empty, and as soon as we have selected an image from the gallery, it should give a message saying that the image is selected. Let's make it image is selected. Okay. And once we have done that, we can just then click on the second button, which is to upload the image. Okay. So let us do that too. And I'm going to add it after this button. Now, what we need to do here is that we are getting the URI, right? So we are going to get the URI, but it requires a byte array. If you remember that the method that we have created, it requires a byte array. Okay. So let us create an extension for this. So I'm going to create extension method for this. Let us go to utils, and I'm going to create a new file. Let's call it as extensions. And I'm going to add it directly over here. I have already the method with me. So what it basically does is that the URI that we are providing, it is basically going to convert it into byte array and return it. Okay. So that is what we are doing here. We have imported the extension. So what we have done so far here is that once we click on the button, we have selected the image from the gallery. Once that is selected, the text would change to image is selected. Now the second step would be to upload the image, right? So what we can do here is also add a check that if the image URI is not null, only then we are going to show this button. Okay. So that means that when we have an image URI with us, only then we will be able to view this button, that is upload image. We are going to convert the URI to byte array, and then with that byte array, we are going to pass it to this method, that is upload file. The bucket name as we have created is photos, and I'm just going to name the file as new image right now. You can name it anything you want. You can take the name of the file from the image that you have selected, or you can do all those things, but to keep this video short, I'm just going to hard code the name right now. So let us first of all check if we are able to upload the file successfully or not. Let me rerun the application. So let's select the image. So as you can see, we are not getting that button, the upload image button, but we are getting the select image button. So let us select the image first of all. As soon as I click that, I will be getting the gallery. Let me choose this particular image. So it says image is selected. That means that we have a value in the image URI, and also we can see that we are getting this upload image button here also. Now we are going to, what we are going to do is we are going to click on the upload image button, and it should be able to upload the image to the bucket, and then we will verify it in the Supabase project. So let us do that. Let us click on upload image, and you can see it says file uploaded successfully. Okay. Let us go back to the Supabase dashboard, and over here, if we refresh the app, and over here that we can see the photo that says new image.jpg, and for some reason if you're not able to see the file, just click on reload. It should refresh the bucket, and if you click on this particular file, we can see that the image that we have selected is uploaded successfully. Okay, now here you can either download the image, you can get the URL, as you can see, expires in 1 week and all these things. The same thing what we are going to do by creating the signed URL. Also, as I said, there are a lot of methods related to storage. You can also have the functionality to download the image from the app itself. You can check the documentation for that. But for the time being, we are just going to create this particular file or this particular image and going to display it in our application. Let's do that next. Now we will go back to the main activity. So the next thing that we are going to do here is to add another button which would be used to get the image. Okay. So there are a lot of checks actually you can add. As I said, I'm not creating a full-fledged project, but just to give you a brief idea on how the methods and functionalities work on Supabase. Okay. So we're going to add the text as get image. And for the on-click part, we are going to say view model. We are going to say read file. The bucket name is photos. The file name is new image. And what we have to do is we have to add the lambda, which would act as a callback function, which returns back the image URL. So also what we need to add at the very top is the image URL mutable state. We're going to say mutable state of, and this would be a string. You can add this. I can remove this also. Now if we go down, we are going to say image URL equals to where it is basically the image that we have received from this method, so which would be this signed URL. Okay. Now once we have received this image URL, as I said, if you remember that this URL is basically a portion of it, right? It's not going to be the entire URL, it's just going to be the part of it which is the signed part. So what we would need to do is we would need to append the Supabase base URL that is provided to our project. So having said that, what we will do here is that instead of just appending it with it, we are going to add that portion here also. So I already have the base URL with me. So in the past couple of videos, if you have seen that, I have added a couple of Supabase URL and client URLs in my local properties and I've used it. So the URL is there itself. You can add it to a constant and use it, or you can just hard code it over here. It's totally up to you, but I'm going to use it from build.config Supabase URL and I'm going to append it like this. Let me also show you what I mean by the Supabase URL. So if you go to the project settings, go to the API, you will see this URL over here, project URL. This is the base URL. You have to add it before the signed part. So that is what I have done here. I have this particular URL with me in the build config. So I'm appending it before the signed section. So once I have this, what I will do is at the very bottom, I'm going to add this. So async image is basically a composable provided by Coil. So I'm just checking that if the image URL is not empty, I'm passing the image URL and you can add any content description you want over here. Okay. Before actually running the application, we need to add a subpath for storage also actually. So the base URL that I showed you in the project setting doesn't have the storage subpath added to it. So we need to add it after the base URL followed by the signed path. Okay. So let us do that first. So let me add this quickly. This would be storage B1 and then the signed section. So this is the base path that I showed you in the project settings, followed by the storage subpath and then the signed section. Okay. Now, once we run the application and click on the get image button, it should successfully read the image URL as well as display the image. Let us check that. Let us click on the get image button. It says file read successfully, and we are able to get the image here also. Now, just to make sure that, now you have to keep in mind that the URL that we have generated is just valid for 20 minutes. Now, let's say if I refresh the page after 20 minutes with the same URL, or try to use the same URL after 20 minutes, it won't work. Okay, so we need to create a different signed URL after that. So what you can do is you can add a custom, I would say, expiry, let's say a week or a month or something like that, depending upon the usage of your application by the users. Or what you can do is you can make the storage public. Okay, now let us see how we can make the storage public and what are the different changes that we need to do for that. The only difference is that we won't require this entire section. The entire path will be provided to us by the public URL itself. But to make the storage public, what we will do this time is, instead of doing it programmatically, we can just simply go to the dashboard and make the storage public. So let us do that. So inside the storage for this particular photos bucket, we go to edit bucket, and you can see it says public bucket, and even can read any object without any authorization. Now let's say you have a use case where the data, or let's say a list of images, is public to anyone can read it. You can make your bucket public. So we are going to simply enable this and save this. Now we can actually create the public URL. So if we don't make the bucket public and try to create the public URL, it would give an error stating that the bucket is not public. Okay, so we need to make it public in order to get the public URL. Now let us quickly make some modification and check if we are able to get the public URL correctly and display the image correctly or not. So again, I'll go back to the same method. Or what I can do is I can create a different method which says read public file. You can name it accordingly. I'm going to use the same bucket name, file name, on image retrieved URL. And even I'm going to just simply copy and paste the entire thing over here, because the only change that is required here is this part. I'm going to say bucket dot public URL and just the path. So that just the path is required in this particular section. So I'm just going to say file name dot jpg. That's it. That is the only difference. So over here we have this create signed URL where we need to provide the expiration also, but in public URL we don't need to provide any expiration because it's a public URL. So in the main activity, I'm going to add another button. I'm just going to change the name of this. We are going to call it as read public file. And as I said, the only difference here is that we don't require this entire section. We are just going to use the URL as it is provided to us. Okay. Let me just simply change this to get public image. Okay. Now, if we try to run the application, we should be able to view the image exactly as it is, but this time it would be just a public URL. Okay. Let me rerun the application. So now if we click on get public image, it should do the exact same thing as it did before, but this time we can see the difference that we are not using this prefix path, we're just using the entire path. So as you can see that it read it successfully and it gave the entire path to us, which got updated over here, and again using the same coil composable we were able to display the image. Okay, so as I said, there are lots of different methods regarding to storage. Feel free to check the documentation with the link that I have provided in the description and try to play around with it. So that is pretty much it for this particular video. If you have any concerns, any doubts, anything you want to ask, feel free to write it in the comment section. I reply to almost all the comments. And if you have stayed till the end, if you find this useful, please like the video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.